Ladies and gentlemen, we're reached the appointed time. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust. And the first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, the meeting held June 25th. Copies of those minutes have been distributed to the trustees prior to this meeting. Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes as distributed? Have a motion made and approved the minutes. Please cast your votes. And the item is approved. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is to ratify, I think a better term, ratify the claims made against the Economic Development Trust. And most of those are TIF monies. We just act as a pass-through on. Are there any questions or comments on the claims that were submitted?
I do have one question. Kathy, can you help educate me to the bond defeasance issue through the Urban Renewal Authority in the amount of $2 million? It's on page 1.
Yes. In the Devon Implementation Agreement, a loan was made by the Urban Renewal Authority to the city to defease the bonds associated with the sale of the parking garages. And that money was to be repaid to OCURA once the priority public improvements were completed and funding was available. So with the issuance of the permanent bonds from TIF 8 we issued $147 million a couple of months ago, the funding to repay OCURA that loan was included in that bond issue.
I guess I was just surprised by the even amount. There was no interest required.
We loaned them $2 million. OCURA loaned $2 million, so there was no interest on it.
Okay, thank you. I'll offer a motion to approve, subject to other questions.
Are there any other questions?
Second the
There's a
motion.
motion made and second to ratify the claims. If there are no questions, please cast your votes, and the claims are ratified. The next item are some items for individual consideration. And item A is the status report on the construction projects that have been going on downtown. So are there any questions or comments? So we have a report.
With construction of the first 5 streetscape packages winding up, the photographs that I've brought you today on progress largely deal with the area around the Sandridge site. The first photograph shows Robinson between Kerr and McGee looking back to the east. So not only can you see the amenity zone and the sidewalk that is part of Project 180, but then you can see the area that sweeps back onto the Sandridge campus. The next photograph was taken on McGee between Robinson and Broadway, looking back towards the east, towards Broadway. Again, you're able to see both the public improvement and the private improvement. The third photograph is Kerr between Robinson and Broadway, this time looking back to the west. And then the final photograph is the plaza area between the Sandridge and Braniff buildings. So this is McGee looking back to the south. I would point out to you the architect for Sandridge used the Project 180 palette of materials, the same trees, the same tree grates, the same pavers, but they applied them in a little bit different fashion to be able to create their own identity around the site. So here, if you notice, the amenity zone tightens up a little bit. It's a little bit narrower than it is in other areas. And instead of using 2 finishes of pavers, it uses only 1. So this is what we've seen in several areas where a corporate client chooses to use that palette of material, but then turn it slightly to create their own look. So with that, I would certainly try to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions? Do you have any comments you'd like to make on the park? That Kerr McGee, that Sandridge and the city are sponsoring together?
The architect has been working on a conceptual design that I think is probably a month or so out from going to the Downtown Design Review Committee. They've been meeting with adjacent property owners and stakeholders. It would be my hope that it would be pleasing to the trust when they're ready to bring it forward, but they're getting very close.
Good. I think it's encouraging that Sandridge has continued to participate in that, given the recent financial difficulties that they've incurred. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What do we have to receive that report? Is that? Okay. Well, let's go on to item B then. Project 180 financial report as of June 30th. Brent, I understand you have a couple comments you'd like to make on that.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted just to point out the fact that we have about $111 million of our $176 million budget is roughly complete. I wanted to caution you, though, with the $111 million that it shows we've only expended $106. We have not made some final payments on some of those, so we will be closing those out, the last 5 on your document there. And then as we proceed today with Package 6A, that one is located under the under design, and right now we've spent approximately $87.9 million of TIF funds or Economic Development Trust funds, along with $33.4 million of general obligation bonds, and an additional $2.7 million from our Capital Improvement Fund, and then the water utility has roughly provided around $9 million of funding for Project 180 to date. So just wanted to provide this to you, so as we proceed with 6A, funding is available. As you'll recall, we did the bond financing in April, closed that out in April. We have adequate funding there for to do Package 6A.
I thought it was important for Brett to make a few comments because it seems like all we've seen up here is additions, and that we are, even with all those additions, still within the budget as set forward. So. Yes, ma'am. Question.
Brent, perhaps you can't identify it, but Mary Gardens Restaurant / band shell for $7.6 million. How much of that budget or that project budget was the restaurant itself?
I'm going to have to defer with my friends from Public Works on that. We'll have to get back with you on that.
Are there any additional questions, comments? We need a motion to receive this budget then.
I'd like to move that we receive.
Second motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Please cast your votes, and the item is received. Thank you very much. Item 4C is final plans and specifications to be advertised for bids with Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust and City of Oklahoma City projects. Several projects are Project 180 Streetscape Projects Package 6A. Are there any questions or comments on that? Eric, do you have?
I think Eric Winger, the city's Public Works Director, is here to make a brief presentation about Package 6. We're going to be splitting it into 2 pieces, Package 6A and 6B. We wanted to explain to you how the packages were going to be delivered.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Trust. One of the items that we wanted to make sure that you had, and you can see the map on the screen, and hope you have the handout as well, is that everything on Project 180 that's been completed to date, and if you look at this drawing, everything in blue represents packages 1 through 5. And we're really wrapping up that work now. The construction update that you received just a little bit earlier in your meeting really just shows the tail end of those pieces being completed, along with the work that's in the Bicentennial Park, and of course also the Mary Botanical Gardens. As you look at the other colors that are on the drawing, what you see in yellow is what we're calling 6A. When we presented this to you several months ago, we were looking at 1 Package 6 and 1 Package 7. We've had an opportunity on EK Gaylord, which you'll see on the right-hand side of the drawing. We've got a darker color, kind of a maroon or a red, to break that into a Package 6B. We're not quite finished with the design there. There's some unique opportunities, that being the site of the Santa Fe station and also the hub of the transit hub for Oklahoma City. We want to make sure that we take extra time with the design on that and coordinate that with some of the other improvements in the area. And with that being said, it's going to take another month or 2 for us to work through those details. So to not hold up Package 6 completely, we're ready to present to you 6A today. The items that you see in brown, or the streets that you see in brown, that would be Package 7. And if I were to kind of give you an overall picture of what's to come, 6A is a project that we would bid here in the next month that could go into construction as early as October. We would anticipate bidding package 6B by the end of the year, and again, entering that into construction here in the next few months. But 7 isn't that far behind either. It would bid early next year and enter into construction. So simultaneously, we'll have 3 construction contracts working on all the areas that you see identified in yellow, the red, and the brown. 6A, if we break that down a little more specifically, it covers the streets of McGee, Robinson, and Kerr. This also includes a lot of utility relocations again, and so a lot of the things that we experienced on packages 1 through 5 are going to be re-experienced on package 6A. We've taken a couple of approaches, and we've started to coordinate with downtown businesses on how that will best be phased. We've taken the initial approach that we might look at a block-by-block type construction plan where a contractor does one block. When they finish, they move to the next block. When this was presented to the Devon Implementation Committee, I think it was well received, but they also wanted to make sure that we had time is of the essence. And so I think we're going to come back with a revised phasing plan that might perhaps do 2 blocks or possibly 3 blocks at a time. But again, the overall concept is that we limit the amount of construction that we completely tear up at once so that we can keep better progress on the contractors and turning over spaces back to the public and to the businesses that are going to be affected. The fewer blocks we do at a time, the longer the project will take. And so as I present this to you today, what I will tell you is that we're going to have, again, time is of the essence. We're going to have a formal phasing plan that we can present to you at a future meeting that will show how all 3 contracts will dovetail together and how that they'll work, how that we're going to handle all the detours, how we're going to handle the streets and things that are closed. But another aspect of 6A that you haven't seen in 1 through 5 is that we're planning to keep sidewalks completely open during construction. We're looking at a barrier wall system that's going to allow us to keep construction separated from pedestrians, much like what you saw around the construction of the Myriad Botanical Gardens with the concrete low walls and the advertising or graphic type panels that were on the sides that showed the project, things that we also saw at Sand Ridge and at Devon while those campuses were constructed. We're returning that to Project 180. Once they finish the streetscape itself, then we'll be able to do the sidewalks. But again, we're looking at convenience to businesses as one of the key goals. But at the same time, we want to get through this as quickly as possible. The project that's presented to you today is slightly over budget. It's over budget because of some of the utilities that have to be relocated, and so AQUIT, the Water Utility Trust, is aware of those additional costs. We also anticipate paying us a premium to phase the construction, just as I've described. Anytime we slow up construction to be more convenient, there is a cost of overhead to a contractor. But again, I think we're trying to take all the lessons learned from the previous packages, apply those as we move forward, and have best of both worlds, something that we can do very quickly, but also try to limit the disruptions in downtown.
Any questions? Yes.
Eric, I apologize if you said this, but the time frame on 6A, it'd be let at the end of the year. What's the period of time it would require in terms of?
If we actually did it block by block, it could take 2 years. You know, if we looked at it from that perspective. So particular blocks could take anywhere from 5 to 6 months each. But again, look at all of the coloring that you see on this drawing. It doesn't mean that just one block in downtown would be in construction at one time, realizing that all 3 contracts would be let at once. But it could take up to 2 years. Maybe if you analyze all 3, it could be 2.5 or 3. We want to back that up a little bit based on comments we got from the Implementation Committee.
My point being that EK Gaylord is a major thoroughfare for basketball and conventions and such as that.
So again, if we look at a project like EK Gaylord, it would be phased in such a way that, unfortunately, because of its width, we wouldn't have to completely close down that street at once. I think we can do Gaylord in half at a time. But again, it wouldn't be a 2-year duration on Gaylord as a whole. That would be another 6 to 7 to 9 month type of project overall. I'm talking about the big package itself. Look at multiple blocks that would be included there. Obviously, we're in a more complicated area of downtown as well, so there's a lot of details that we have to work through. But with that said, the consultants have done very well. We've coordinated most, if not all, of the utilities, and we're ready to proceed.
Have we designed it to minimize the impact on traffic downtown?
We've minimized it so that, as we learned on packages 1 through 5, that we wouldn't close parallel streets. Obviously, we would provide for detours. And so where we had, say, Walker and Hudson constructed at the same time, or perhaps Reno and Sheridan at the same time, we're limiting and avoiding that as much as possible, so that the detour is 1 block out of your way to get to a particular business.
Are there any other questions, comments?
Just to share, you seem to have been very conscientious about your approach to it, try to minimize the impact, but this is obviously arterial streets for pedestrian and vehicular traffic, so this is going to be incredibly disruptive.
Construction is not convenient, absolutely, and there will be disruption, and I think from the lessons learned, we want to minimize that, but for me to stand here and tell you that there won't be impacts, there will be. We've done considerable effort in getting out to the businesses as early as possible to let them know what is coming. We recognize that, of course, seasonal holidays, things like between Thanksgiving and the New Year, have to be avoided in many instances, and so we've done our best to coordinate that as well. So you'll see a lot of times where we may have a business closed on a day. Of course, the preferred day may be a Saturday or a Sunday, and those are the kinds of coordinated efforts that we'll do, that when we're replacing the concrete in front of the front door, if they have an alternate access, provide that as much as possible. But in some cases, if there's a single point of access, we'll do our best. But I think, again, is one of the things that we realize is, as difficult as construction was, even on packages 1 through 5, I think the benefits that we're now starting to realize, the shaded streetscapes, the opportunities for the benches, and just the general atmosphere of downtown has dramatically changed. And so I think the hope that I would give to those that are going to be affected in packages 6A, B, and 7 would be that once we complete those blocks and we can return those for use, that they're so superior to what we have today.
Oh, I get that. I share your perspective. I always try to convince people orange cones are a positive sign, but
it won't be convenient. It
right.
won't. Yeah.
I wonder, I think Rhonda makes an exceptional point beyond coordinating with existing businesses and their daily employees. Is there something more maybe we could do through downtown Oklahoma City or some similar entity to share information with those occasional visitors to the downtown area?
I think one of the opportunities we have is to continue to promote the city's website. We have been doing a downtown traffic advisory for several years now, and we're going to maintain that. That's still issued each and every Friday. And I think for those that are interested in knowing what streets might be temporarily closed or closed for any duration, that we invite them to visit okc.gov. There's links to Project 180 there. We're going to keep all of the information updated on the Project 180 links and also the downtown traffic advisory. So for those planning to visit Oklahoma City, please visit the website.
Eric, in conjunction with the website, could we also make an effort to make the public aware of closings through a more general vehicle, i.e. the TV or the newspapers?
You know, I think we can try to take advantage of that. Obviously, we're limited to what they're willing to pick up as the update, but absolutely. And I think social media, through Twitter and Facebook, there may be some opportunities as well. So, I mean, we'll exercise as many avenues as we can.
And Rhonda, go ahead, please.
And to add to that point, maybe it is a sponsorship on traffic reports on TV or something like that that could allow for updates. But we also have the issue of people coming to Oklahoma City for tourist opportunities, and they are clueless as to how to navigate. And if we had links that were provided to all our hotel properties and so on, that when they're investigating it would automatically go to that so that they would have assistance in navigating. It's all the downtown, the people who don't come very often are the ones that are clueless, including how to still park in those parking meters. But that's another point.
Well, let us take those comments and see what opportunities that we can provide. And I think, as I try to reemphasize, we're really going to try to keep construction within construction zones. When we open up a segment of street for Oklahoma City construction, we're planning to keep those sidewalks and those direct areas adjacent to the buildings open. So although it may not be accessible by a vehicle, you as a pedestrian can still get out onto the sidewalk and have that original sidewalk to walk on until it's absolutely necessary that it be pulled and replaced. But again, I think these are, lessons learned, and I think we'll make future adjustments as needed as we get into really the heart of downtown.
Any other questions or comments? And this is a $9.6 million project.
That is our current construction estimate, although I suspect that it may vary somewhat as we answer questions for the contractors and make some final adjustments, yes.
Do we have a motion regarding this one, please?
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. Please cast your votes. And the item is approved. Item 4D is a change order like we've had in the past. This is an increase, and despite all these increases, we're still under budget, or within our budget, so we can take some comfort in that, I guess. Are there any questions or comments on this particular change order? In terms of the overall project, it's a relatively small amount, but still, I think it deserves our scrutiny. If there are no comments, the chair will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion made and seconded. Is there further discussion? And the item is approved. Thank you very much. Item 4E is next. I understand we have a presentation from Mr. Meacham on this particular project. No. I'm sorry, you're right. This is an audit contract, and it says in here, and I think it's true, it's customary for City Trust to contract with the company that provides audit services to the city, and this is just following up on that process. Are there any questions or comments on the audit issue?
Move to approve.
A motion made and second. Further discussion? Cast your votes. The item is approved. Thank you. Now, Scott, I'm sorry, I got you out of order there. You sort of look like an auditor over there with it.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Well, we're back, I believe we were here in May, and sort of introduced you to the concept of the Grow OKC program. And just a little bit of kind of background of the public policy and what's behind this idea. I think it's a proposed marriage of some funding to deal with a problem. And we have an opportunity from the funding. So we have a problem and an opportunity. The problem is, I believe, and if you look at, let's go back 15, 20 years in history of Oklahoma City, you'll see a very different makeup of employers than you see today, as far as large employers, medium employers, and small employers. In fact, we've seen a dramatic shift to large employers over that period of time. And we've seen decreases specifically in manufacturing base, the smaller mid-sized manufacturers in Oklahoma City. And to be a long-term healthy economy, you need to have a mix. You need to have large employers, medium employers, and small employers, because when you're more dependent on large employers, then you have a bigger risk if one of them moves or something happens with one of them, because that takes much bigger bite out of your economy. Now, we've been fortunate over the past decade, because when we've lost a large employer like a GM or a Dayton Tire, we've been growing so much in the other large employers, we've been able to offset that and not feel that as much. So I would say that the problem is, what can a city do to encourage growth in its small and mid-sized employers? And just like all cities, most of your incentive packages are designed around your large employers, because that's where most of your jobs are, and that's where you probably get the most bang for your buck. The question is, what can you do for these smaller and mid-sized employers? So that's the problem. The opportunity is that both of us have some money that we need to deploy. I2E got a federal grant from the Treasury Department to help stimulate the economy in Oklahoma. All states got it, and we were the recipient for Oklahoma. So we have $1 million that the federal government has given us to deploy in growing businesses in Oklahoma, and we're going to deploy $1 million of that in Oklahoma City is what we're proposing to do. And the city has, from your SIP program and from the bond issue that funded that, you have some low-interest loan funds that had not been deployed. And so we're not talking about taking money away from another program or anything else. We're taking some undeployed funds from the city side, and we're taking these undeployed funds from the I2E side, $1 million each, and putting into a loan pool. Okay, I say loan. The city's funds would go in as a loan. Our funds would go in as a preferred investment or convertible debt investment. So we're going in as equity investors. Your all's money would go in as loan funds. So let's figure out how to make this move. Should click? Right click? The other? Left click? Oh, left click. Left. Oh, I got it backwards. Is that right? I don't know. Anyway, so what the program will do in specifics, the details are, it will support existing Oklahoma City small businesses with growth capital. Okay, so let's say you're a manufacturer and you're trying to compete in the world today. typically American manufacturers, because of the low cost of labor in countries like Mexico and China and whatnot, we've been forced to compete not on price but quality. So we have to be the highest quality option for consumers out there. Well, the way you get to quality is through obviously American craftsmanship and whatnot, but investments in technology. So it's become much more expensive for American manufacturers to compete in that space. And so what I envision here, and again, the program could be broader than manufacturing, but I really see it as a good fit for manufacturing. So say you're a small manufacturer in Oklahoma City and you're wanting to compete with a Chinese company, and you're wanting to go a high-quality route to offset, their low-cost, low-quality product. Well, you have to make capital investment. Well, the problem is a capital investment, you go to the bank, and the bank's going to say, I want 20, 25, 30% down payment. It's hard for a business that's already in a struggling environment to come up with those capital investments. And so a bank, although they want to make the loans, will say, sorry, you're going to have to, you got to come up with the equity investment before we can invest. And so what this does is this helps with that piece of the puzzle, I believe. And, I was concerned about, as a former banker, I thought bankers would see it as a tool, but I heard some concerns that maybe bankers might see it as competing with them. So I actually called David Harlow, president of Bank First Oklahoma City yesterday, to talk to him about the concept. And he loved it. And he said, in fact, I could use his name and tell you all he thought it was a great idea. And wants us, if we get this done, if you guys bless the marriage I'm talking about, then he wants us to put together some briefing papers for him so he can distribute through all his bankers. Because again, he saw the same problem I saw. It's hard to do these deals, and this will help with that piece. Well, how does it help? So what happens is, like I said, you end up with this equity piece that a growing business can't come up with. Under our program, we can use debt to match our investment. And we can use your debt, and we can use other debt. We have to have all this, our program and your program, we're going to require for this program a one-to-one debt at the deal level. So we'd never be doing like 100%. So let's say a banker is going to loan 80%, okay? The person doesn't have 20%, but maybe they have the 10%. Well, we would provide the other 10%, okay? 5% would come from the city as low-interest loan funds to go into the project. You would be superior to our position, okay, but subordinate to the bank that's doing the primary lending position. So we're the caboose on the train, you guys are in the middle, and the bank would be at the first. Then we would also put in a 5% preferred stock investment, and that's why we're last, because we're going in as an equity investor, preferred equity investor. Then the owner would have to put in either 10% of their own money, or, again, we can count matching funds that they go borrow that we can put in as matching funds. We're going to limit it to $100,000 to $250,000 per investment, because we want to, again, not make all of our bets in one place. We'd like to spread it out and get as much benefit as we can. We will administer and manage the program, meaning we'll work on going out and getting the deals, getting them worked up. If the approval process will be, we'll have our internal approval process, you all will have your approval process, we'll work them up, get them to you all approve it, we approve it, and then we will close the deal, fund the deal, and do it, and then we'll collect both our money and your money. It has to be a small business as defined by SBA, meaning less than 250 employees. It has to be located within the city limits of Oklahoma City. It has to focus on companies creating primary jobs. Both your funds and our funds require that. We cannot use it for retail businesses. That's why I say it's a perfect fit for manufacturing. In fact, we've had some preliminary discussions with the Manufacturing Alliance, and they're very excited about it. And again, if it gets a blessing from this group, they want us to bring in their Oklahoma City field representatives so they can understand it and see as a tool how it could be used. And I talked about the dollar-for-dollar co-investment required. Your funds will be secured, so you will be secured in the same basis as the bank, although you'll be second to them, but you will be secured. So you will not be making any unsecured loans. It'll all be secured. We will be making unsecured loans. That's why we're going to be pretty careful on the underwriting and the due diligence on these things because, like I said before, we're at the end of the train. So if it goes off the tracks, then we're for sure going to lose our money. So we're going to try to be very careful. And again, in liquidation, of course, your funds would receive priority over our funds. I think I talked about the due diligence and the process we'll go to. Again, you'll get to see the deals and decide what you want to do and what you don't want to do. We'll provide quarterly reports to you on how we're doing, how the funds have been deployed, how the paybacks are going, any problems we've seen. The metrics that we're going to track are job creation and private investment leverage. So the idea is that if we're making good investments, we're creating jobs in Oklahoma City. Number two, capital attracts capital. And that's one of the absolute truisms, especially in small businesses. When a company sees capital willing to go in, then the other capital will go into that. So we're going to look at the amount of other investment, including lended funds, that will go into these projects. So you can see kind of the multiple or the bang we're getting for our collective buck. And that's, again, those are some of the statistics that we have to report to Treasury on our funds anyway, because that's what the federal government is measuring. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're talking about, but I know it's different than anything you've done before. It sounds complicated. It's really not quite as complicated as it sounds, but I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions?
Scott, I know this is lots of due diligence and lots of criteria. In addition to the banks and other groups that you're going to inform of the program, what other means are you going to make people aware of this, A? And then also, are you looking to kind of, you're saying manufacturing is an ideal target, but are you looking at any dispersal of SIC, opportunities in Oklahoma City, where our growth potential, so that we're covering our bases versus going all into mining or something else?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
So first question was partners. We already talked to the Oklahoma City Chamber. We thought the Chamber was great because they touch so many businesses, a great way to carry the message out, and the Chamber has agreed to do that, to go out and inform members and non-members alike about the availability of these funds. We think banks are natural partners, so we're going to go to multiple banks, not just Bank First. I just called David because I know David. But we're going to go to multiple banks and let them know the availability of the funds. The Manufacturers Alliance I mentioned before, I think, again, they touch a lot of people. But you do make a great point, because when we're making investments, we really don't want to focus all in one space. You want to have diversification. And so we probably wouldn't want to do all manufacturing. We wouldn't want to do maybe all even valve manufacturers within manufacturing. We would like to have some dispersal of that, because then we don't have the market risk if something happens in the, demand for valves or whatever. So, or somebody comes up with some whole new way of doing it, and you don't even need valves anymore. So we want to get our funds paid back, because we exist to help other companies, so we want to get them back so we can help other companies. So we will try to diversify, and we try to go into things that we see better growth prospects in, because, again, at the end of the day, hopefully we're creating jobs.
Any other questions? Scott, you mentioned a loan, and the loan generally has a term and an interest rate associated with it. Has those been established?
Yeah, I think we've talked about a 5 to 7 year term on the length, and I think that on the city's rate, we talked about, was it 4? We hadn't really finalized it, but we talked maybe around 4%, something like that. Again, below market, especially for a subordinate lender in a structure. That'd be a heck of a rate, probably less than half of the going rate.
Larry?
A couple of questions, if I could, Scott. The target market for this is not the or is not the startup company that normally we think in terms of angel investors to do? No,
this is more, we're targeting more existing companies that are wanting to grow and expand with these funds. We have other funds that focus on the startup companies, but we actually call this our Grow Fund. So it's for existing businesses with existing sales and existing, employees that we're just going to try to help grow and expand, and maybe even you could even look at it on a retention deal if you had a company that's at threat of jobs going away.
And so the company would present to you their their established financial record, their balance sheet, their P&L, and you put them through an analysis to see if they are a solid company right now, and do they have the potential to go to this next higher level?
Absolutely. Because we're going to be doing our underwriting, whereas with a startup, we have to sort of use projections. With an existing company, we'll look back and look forward too. But yeah, at the end of the day, we want to get paid our funds back just like we want to get your funds back for you.
Okay, and I just got to get one little commercial. You said capital attracts capital. There's another thing that also kicks in here, which you and I probably disagree on. Debt creates debt. And that's the only reservation I have of putting these companies into greater debt. But I understand, the mechanism of that. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, on the qualifications, could you help me understand when it says located within the city limits of Oklahoma City? What type of qualifier is that? Is that the corporate headquarters? Is that the site of the job creation or the expansion?
Yeah, we're actually using your definition from the SIP funds, so it'll be whatever meets that definition will meet our definition, and honestly, I don't know that level of detail of your funds.
It's where the business is located, where the jobs are going to be created, or where the investment's
Where
going
the
to be.
payroll happens?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be their headquarters. no.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm excited for it and appreciate the idea. I think it's creative and necessary, so thank you. To the extent there aren't further questions, I'd offer approval of F1.
Second?
The motion made. Is there further questions? We've got the answer man here. We don't want to get away too easily. Scott, thank you very much for your presentation. All those, please cast your votes, and the item is approved. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the General Manager's reports. Are there any questions or comments? I'm sorry.
I'd also offer a motion to approve F2.
F2. Okay, I'm sorry. Got carried away. Anxious to leave.
Second on F2?
A motion made and second to approve F2. Please cast your votes. It is also approved. Thank you very much. Now we can have the General Manager's reports. Are there any questions or comments on General Manager's reports? Any comments from the trustees?
I do have a question. Thank you. Kathy, from your professional experience, are you aware whether there's any type of, this may not even be good public policy, but I'm curious, about business impact costs or ways to help? When I look at a map like this, I'm excited for the growth and what it looks like when it's done, but I'm mindful also of small retailers or small restaurant operators or people who suffer a pretty significant interruption to traffic flow and the ability of even pedestrians to get to their business. And I wonder, are there cities, have we ever done something similar to that? Are there cities around the country that have an approach that helps to insulate that type of loss?
I think, I'm sure there are ways to measure it. I'm not, we haven't done it here, but I imagine that especially with some of the federal highway projects and other large state construction projects, they probably do have a way of measuring that and better understanding the impact on businesses. I do think that what Eric was talking about, by trying to keep the sidewalks open and by limiting the construction to one side of the street at a time, will help us mitigate the impact on those businesses. And the other thing that he was talking about was, originally we'd had this idea of going one block at a time to do these projects. And as we began to talk to people, we realized that they would rather pull the Band-Aid off quick than delay the pain. And so I think that even though we had a lot of pain around City Hall, we've learned a lot of lessons, and we can help our contractors go more quickly and help to pull that Band-Aid off faster instead of delaying these projects and making them last, instead of 2 years, up to 3 years. So I think that we're trying to do that. If you'd like, we can try to do some research and see if there's anything out there like that. Understanding that Park Avenue is probably where the biggest business impact would be for us, and that's in Package 7, so we do have a little bit of time to maybe try to work some more with those businesses and better understand how we can help mitigate the impact.
I'm going to ask you to do additional research. I know you're very familiar with trends around the country.
Other comments or questions? Are there any general comments from the trustees? Comments from staff?
I don't know.
Comments from the public? All staff. Well, we've got to make sure we're saying. There's 2 staff members over there, aren't there? Having nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.